Adolescence is such a unique and amazing stage of discoveries, but it is also a time for many challenges. Girls have particular needs and concerns while they go through this period of growth, as it demands its share of adjustments. As a parent, I often find it's hard to remember exactly just how stressful and eventful the teenage years can be. Hello, I am Geneviève Leduc, Senior Program Advisor at FitSpirit. Welcome to our podcast, To Each Their Own Playing Field. We're all well aware that physical activity is a source of well-being, and we wish that our children would take full advantage of its numerous benefits. However, girls drop out of sports when they hit puberty, and the majority of them are not active enough to discover the joy and fun of physical activity. My first guest, she is a dance artist with an outstanding career as a professional performer. She worked with many music icons such as Beyoncé, J.Lo, Justin Timberlake, and even Madonna, just to name a few. She's also a choreographer, a speaker, and the founder of the Professional Dance Career Course. But most importantly, in our hearts anyways, she's a FitSpirit mentor, and we are so thankful for her involvement with us. So Kim Gingras, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much.
First of all, Kim, can you take us through your childhood? Were you always an active child?
That's a good question. I would say yes. As early as, I think I was 5 years old when I watched the movie Dirty Dancing. Classic, right? Also, Grease came along in those times, and I just fell in love with dancing. So I grew up, even though I started training in dance only when I was 15 years old, if we backtrack to when I was a kid, my grandparents would do social dancing. At parties, we'd rock and roll, and I learned cha-cha with my family. So it was always very, a hobby. Just fun, pure fun at home. So that got me going quite a bit. And then throughout the years, I try to make my way through like what really is me in terms of activities. I've tried karate, gymnastics. They were all fun, but it was never like a heck yes until I saw my younger sister go to a hip hop class. And a few months later, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is exactly the type of thing that I'm looking to do. So then I was around 15 when I started training in dance. And
what was it with dance? What made you feel like you had to try this activity? Why did you like it so much?
It just looked so much fun. Of course, music. I think just music moves you, whether, you're in a good mood, a bad mood. I just feel like it transforms your day. It feels great. There's something that I also got to learn throughout my first years in dance is the community behind it. You're often dancing, anyways, in the styles that I did, commercial, hip hop, all of that. I know it's not the same for every style, but it was very much a group thing. I was part of a team, and all of a sudden I have new girlfriends and friends and people that I can, just have fun with and go to if there's anything. So the community part and then also the expression part. So with dance, I feel like you can take your bad day, use it and like just get that whatever out of you that you need to get out, or you can, just take a break from what's happening at home or at school and just enjoy dance. So there's something quite therapeutic about it too.
Oh, I love hearing all the good sides of of dancing.
Yes,
it's all very wonderful, and you seem like you've enjoyed it quite a bit, and you feel. I can see that you're healthy in the way that you express yourself through dance. But as a mom, I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels sometimes maybe a little bit uneasy with dance and the focus on the body and the body image issues that it can trigger, especially on teenage girls. Did you always feel safe in the dance environment?
I did not.
Okay.
And I'm glad that you're bringing this up. I can't speak on let's say ballet. I know there's a whole department with classical training that can be very rough the way it's handled with the body image, with getting on a scale. What is your body weight? What are you eating today? I never had to live through that in terms of the nutrition and body shape and all that. I was never really shamed for that particularly. But if I fast forward and now that's past my teens, I think I was 17 or 18 when I started being part of a new company, and it was very much abuse of power that was involved. And so I can understand depending on where you go, what school you train at, there are some good questions for parents or some things to look into before maybe putting your child in that position, speaking to the teachers, maybe asking to, hey, can I sit in on a class and see what it's like and what they learn? Not to be afraid to have those conversations and to sit down with the dancer after, hey, how was it? What are the positives? What are the negatives? What are your friends like? Do you get breaks? Do you get to drink water and eat a little snack if you need to? Like, what does that look like? I know that seems silly, but when I was saying abuse of power and all of that, sometimes we wouldn't be allowed to have a drink of water for hours.
Oh, wow.
We'd dance until 2 a.m. and it's like, you don't get a break.
That's intense.
Yeah. That was really bad, and I'm glad I'm out of that and that person was outed. But all that to say, having that conversation, I think, is really important.
And I think that recently we've seen more body diversity represented in dance.
Yes.
As a parent, I'm happy to see that. Is this something that you see even in the higher levels of performance?
Absolutely, yes. And that we're not there yet, but it's a great step in the right direction. The diversity in just the styles, the heights, the ethnicities, the body weight, the shapes, all of that. And I think it's just something to celebrate. It feels great to be that little girl at home and, watch TV or go see a show and say, hey, she's me, that's me, and that's so important. So I'm all for it. And that's probably why the reasons why I love Beyonce so much as a boss, because she was that person. I remember when I first started working with her, it was time for us to decide like the costumes and the hair before the concert, like what are we going to look like? What are we doing? Yeah. And she would come up to us and be like, hey, Kim, so how do you feel your best and your sexiest? Is it hair down? Is it hair up, curly, straight?
Wow.
Okay, great. Do that. It's not always the case. Sometimes they have a vision. We all look the same. Yeah. But that was my introduction to her. And I was like, wow, she's really great. She's really embodying and celebrating who we are individually on stage with her. And so I think that energy, that quality is so important to be spread throughout all spheres of dance.
Wow, great story. Do you have any tips or advice for parents if they don't want their daughter dropping out of dance for those reasons?
Absolutely. I think there's always a way to create your own formula. So not to think it's all or nothing. Oh, if I sign up to this dance session or season, it means I have to do the performances and I have to compete. There are so many options out there right now, and I think it's just about doing the extra research or reaching out, calling them, the owner of the studio, hey, my child would love to dance, but they're not into this or this or this. Is there a possibility to work around that? And I would hope that they would say yes. And if not, I would keep searching because I know there are options out there. So first of all, I feel like I have so many thoughts in my mind. First of all, there are types of studios that are called drop-in studios.
Okay.
More so in Montreal area, but there are some elsewhere. Quebec as well has some where you don't have to sign up for a whole season. You're really just showing up to these classes to train in the moment. You take it home and that's it.
Just like a workout class.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So you're not committing to, it's a new choreography every time. You're not building a show. You're not building a performance. Yeah. So that could be an option for them. And then also in terms of competition, there are so many groups or classes where they don't go and compete. And that's totally fine. I feel like a lot of dancers or young teenagers will think dancing equals competition. But personally, I think I did 3 competitions in my whole life. That's it. There was like a year and a half where I was like, oh, this is fun. Let's give it a try. And then that was it. I was like, okay, it was cool, but I'm ready to move on to something else. So if competing is stressful in a not fun way, you don't have to do it. I think it's all about the pleasure. We're here to have fun, to enjoy ourselves. It's dancing. It should feel great. So how can you create your formula that makes sense for you for it to be fun?
Good to know. Wonderful. Now, in addition to the dancing and choreographing part of your career, you're also quite active on social media.
Yes.
So what's your take on the social media platforms? It has good sides and not so good sides as well. So what's your take on that?
Yes. I feel like sometimes I love it and sometimes I want to throw my phone out the window. And I know I'm not alone.
Oh, no.
But yes, I think there are some great sides to it. The community building, the inspiration, the new ideas that come to you with the people that you follow. And then there's also the comparison, the competition, their life is so much better than mine, right? We have to say it. I know people know it, but just to be reminded that everyone's posting a highlighted version of their lives, right? And so what I like to do with my mentees, with my dancers that I teach, is a muting party. That's what I call it. So there's the follow button, but then there's the muting button. So you're still following them. They probably won't even know it, but all of a sudden you're not seeing their pictures or their stories on your feed. And so I really ask my girls to sit down and think carefully, even if it's a best friend of yours. If ever you see their photo or whatever they post and it makes you feel less than, you're not pretty enough, you're not strong enough, you're not smart enough, whatever it might be, it's time to mute. Create this bubble of energy, mute for a moment, for a couple of days, a week, a month, and then you can always unmute and then continue following them when you feel like you are grounded, you feel good and confident about yourself. But we all go through that. I have gone through that recently when I was creating my program. I see all these other programs pop up. You compare yourself. You're like, oh, am I offering the right thing? Is it good enough? Are people going to want to learn from me? And I had to mute my friends. And then, once my program was built, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm confident about what I'm offering. Let's unmute and, support the friends.
Yes, it's a great advice for teenagers, but for us as well, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, aside from dance, I know that you have other, you take pleasure in different types of physical activity. I know that you like going into some trips and enjoying the outdoors.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. I've always loved nature. I think just growing up, my grandparents would take us camping and it was always a part of my life. But now I've taken it to another level where we go van lifing, my husband and I, for a few weeks, sometimes months at a time. And it just really creates this balance that I need between this world of entertainment and industry and what I would like to call rat race, with just like keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with what I see on Instagram, to take a break and leave and be in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere for a few weeks really, really helps balance me out.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel when you cannot take the time to go to the outdoors or be physically active?
I feel that pressure. I feel like I tend to lose myself a little bit. I tend to look left and right more. All of a sudden, I'm losing my focus on who I am, what I'm about, what am I going after. So I think it's about sort of quieting that noise, right? So even if, let's say, I can't go out and van life for a few weeks, maybe I'll just go out for a walk, without my phone, take a moment to myself. I think it's really important to find the balance. And nature is for me, but it's finding that for you, right? For you as a parent and also you for your child, helping them discover what is it for them. Is it meditation? Is it going swimming? Is it like, what is that thing that gets you out of this chaotic society that we're in sometimes, to just have a break, and find yourself?
Well, thank you so much, Kim Gingras, for coming to this podcast. And thank you for everything that you do and the way that you collaborate with us with FitSpirit. You're such an inspiration for our FitSpirit participants and for every teenager out there as well.
It is my pleasure. I wish I had this when I was growing up. You guys rock. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am now with Jamillah Jean. Jamillah is the co-founder of Hike MTL. It's a social enterprise that organizes unique outdoor experiences tailored for BIPOC communities so that Indigenous, Black, and people of color can discover the outdoors in a safe and inclusive space.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with me, Jamillah. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, were you active yourself when you were a teenager?
Oh, goodness. I'd like to think I was somewhat active. If my friends listen to me today, they'll be like, you sucked in basketball, you sucked in volleyball, you sucked at everything. But
wow.
I was still part of the team. So I would say I was definitely still active in being on active teams. But that drifted away as an adult. That just dissipated. Like, when I became an adult, I stopped being so active as I was as a teenager.
And did you always enjoy the outdoors, or not even that?
Not even.
No.
Not even. No. I think that if you would have asked me as a teenager, I would have been like, yeah, this is not for me. I wasn't introduced to it. But I was definitely more keen to do like team sports because my friends were there. So it was really a way for me to socialize, to be honest.
A social thing.
It was really a social thing for me.
Okay, so that being said, what led you to
I
start
know,
Hike MTL?
So here's the thing. Funny enough. Okay. So I started Hike MTL really like years after I've been working with youth for almost 2 decades now, and we used hiking and just outdoors as a therapeutic tool, and that's how I fell in love with nature. But also, I think it also comes to speak to me because I'm very much a lazy person. Like a hike is just a really good way for me to get a good workout in, and all I have to do is walk. And I'm like, look at this. This is just walking in nature. I get lost in nature. So I'm not someone who's going to be like, I need to like be this physically active like that. But I do enjoy connecting in nature. It brings out different benefits. Like you're so much calmer. You're so much more relaxed. Like I could get all the thoughts in my head out. It's just there's more quiet.
The benefits of being active outdoors are really amazing.
Yeah.
So what was the point? What needs did you want to fulfill when creating that safe space for BIPOC communities?
Oh, representation was huge. Representation. When I started, really that was the goal. It wasn't even, I started Hike MTL not with a goal of it becoming a social enterprise. It was really a goal of saying, you know what, like, I just want 1 or 2 families to just feel like they could take this on as a lifestyle change, you know, because I thought that it did our families so well during the pandemic. We really needed that. And then when I started Hike MTL, that was the initial goal of getting 1 or 2. Once we started, there were so many people that at that point I had to be so intentional about the mission. And then it was to change. And we really were like, we really want to, one, demystify, empower people of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color to get outdoors. And at the same time, really reduce the social and economic barriers. So that was our goal. And representation was at the top as well of the list. Like that feeling of feeling like a sense of belonging was super important. Super important. Representation was super important. Like seeing people that look like you in outdoor spaces. That was.
What does it change really? Can you dive into that?
Yeah, it changes that feeling that you belong.
Okay.
It changes that, like, you know, when you're in a space that predominantly doesn't look like you, where you typically might feel like you need to put yourself make yourself very small. You're more timid. You're not sure. You're uncertain, and plus it's very new. You don't necessarily want to take up space confidently. And I think that when you are in a group and there is people that look like you and people that are doing the thing that resemble you, it gives you that confidence. It empowers you to take up that space without feeling like you have to, you know, be like bite-sized, small. Yeah.
And clearly it's working because your enterprise, Hike MTL, has been growing super fast. So clearly people were craving that kind of space. So thank you for organizing that for them. How would you describe the impact that you have maybe on teenage girls? Do you have any success stories to share?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to young girls, you know, even I see it with my daughter. That's something I see a lot with my daughter.
How old is she?
She's 13. Okay. She's 13. Just the level of confidence is just so different. Like I could see her boost and her self-esteem, how it really does actually increase your self-esteem. I see like her taking on challenges a little bit more, and that's also something I see with the younger kids and that are coming in, and then the teenagers coming in, like just that sense of pride when they accomplish something. It's huge. It's really huge for kids. There was one just a small little like antidote. Like when I was hiking with my daughter and son, we did les Hautes-Gorges de la Malbaie, which is
it's quite the challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
Les Acropoles des Draveurs is like it's a 6.5 to 7 hour hike with about 1,200 meters in elevation. It actually just says it on the pancarte, no kids and no animals.
Oh, does it really say that?
Yeah, no kids. So
no.
Yeah, on
I never noticed that.
It does say no kids and no animals. So like when we saw that, we're like, oh, like when they say no kids, they don't mean our kids, because our kids are
they're different.
They're different. So we hiked with our kids, and everyone that we met on the trail was quite fascinated and impressed that we would even be hiking. And that was the first year I told my son, we're not backpacking you, because now you're a big boy. You're going to be able to do this on your own. So yes, we did end up backpacking him at small locations where he needed really a little break. And I would say that's maybe an hour out of the whole 7 hours. But there were moments when I was looking at my daughter, and this is what I wanted to say. There were moments where I was looking at my daughter and she was very isolated. She removed herself completely. She was very much in her head. She was away from us. She was really quiet and pensive. And I didn't want to budge and like really pick too much because I was like, oh, like I'm already struggling, man. I can't help you. What can I do? So I was like, you know what? Let it be. And then when we finish up, I'm gonna ask her. But I let it finish. And a few days after I asked her, I said, hey Nana, like what were you thinking when we were on trail? Like what were you thinking that made you feel like you had to just isolate yourself? And she was like, I needed to get in my head and really talk to myself and say, we are almost there. You can do this, Jamil. You could do this. You could do this, Naima. You are almost there. You can do this.
Wow.
And to hear her like say the things that her dad and I have been trying to instill in her whenever she hits a block, whether that's an exam, whether it's in a competition because she does compete, whether it's in when we're hiking and it's a really hard trail. I could be your cheerleader, but mommy and daddy will not always be there. Mm-hmm. You need to be your own cheerleader. You need to build your own self-talk that is going to push you through. And to see and hear that she did that, I was baffled. Yeah.
What a life lesson that she can carry on other aspects in her life. Wow. Mm-hmm. This is all a conversation about representation and role modeling and everything. And so do you have any advice for parents who might think that their teenager does not see herself in the activity that she would like to pursue or take part in? How can we be good support for our child when that happens?
Yeah, I think, I think that it's really important that we meet our kids where they are, and really just meet them where they are. If it's something that they like to do but they're not feeling so secure about, I would start with very small objectives, like nothing big, like it could be 10, 15, 20 minutes, and fix very small objectives and attainable objectives, and then verbal praise. Like I think that is so often underestimated, but the amount of verbal praise I give to my kids when they're doing something that's tough, it's also a way for me to reward myself because I'm like, you're doing it. But it is so empowering for them and to reward them at the end. So I would highly recommend, I like when we're on trail with kids, even with my son, I mean, people might say like, that's bribing, but I'd be like, hey, we're going to have a hot chocolate at the end. And then
that works.
That works,
oh,
right?
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then in the summertime, it might be like, we might stop for Timbits and I'll just focus on those things, especially when it's hard and they want to give up. I'll be like, hey, so what color, what flavor Timbits did you want again? Like I completely distract them, but it's really important to give them that like little carrot to hold on to. And then as soon as they start doing something that is like really great, they'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. That's just amazing. And make a big deal about it. Like I over exaggerate everything that they do. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. That's so amazing. And then they feel like, oh, is it really that amazing? Like, yes, it's amazing. So I really think that verbal praise is so important. It starts from very young, and overdo it, over exaggerate as much as possible. Like, and it fills their cup. It fills them up.
Those are all great advice, Jamillah. Thank you so much for being with us on this podcast.
Thank you.
And please follow Hike MTL on Instagram.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's explore this topic that can still be somewhat uncomfortable with Lara Emond. Lara is the founder and president of Iris Arlo, a company that markets a wide range of menstrual hygiene products. Welcome to the podcast, Lara.
Thank you.
Can you first take us through what it means for a 13-year-old girl to have to deal with her periods while going to school, maybe having her basketball practice or swim class? How much of a burden is it for her to deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Quite frankly, often it's either a shock or it's either a celebration, and that really depends on the parents. Have they spoken about it, or is it a total surprise for the teenage girl that is basically often discovering a spot of blood in her underwear? So some of them are lucky enough to have parents that will have talked about periods are going to be coming. You're going to go through that biological change. Here's a little first period kit, and showing them how the products work. And ideally, having the parent place that little kit in their school bag also. So that won't be an issue. ideally, schools have also done part of the work,
Hopefully,
have
yes.
given workshops, have talking about it, have products that are accessible for their youth. So it isn't a burden. But the reality is that for a lot of teenage girls, the parents haven't spoken about it. Even themselves, they're surprised that it happens so early. They're not at ease to talk about periods, talk about menstruations, and basically everybody is kind of taken aback and taken by surprise.
What's great, though, what's been great in the past few years is that we've seen an explosion in the variety of the menstrual hygiene products that are available. So we're far away from the time when all that we had were tampons and pads. So can you give us maybe an overview of the newer products that are available to them now?
Yeah, so obviously there's the traditional products. So tampons with and without applicator. There's day pads, night pads, as well as panty liners. What's really important is to always keep in mind that within all of those options, there's also a lot of sub options depending on your flow. So really important to choose a product that's going to be based on how much you bleed or your children does bleed. So it's adapted to their cycle. Afterwards, we've obviously seen an explosion of different options in terms of reusable, which is something that we're seeing that more and more the younger generation, for both just practicality and also to reduce their environmental impact, will be adopting. So there's obviously period underwear, which is basically underwear, but that has what we call a technical bottom that's going to be absorbing the blood. So there's, once again, different levels of absorbency, so important to choose accordingly. Then there's also the cups. Once again, there's different cup models, so you're going to have a model for if you had children, if you didn't have children. There's going to be different forms of them, different stems to take them out of your vagina afterwards. And what we've recently seen more and more is the apparition of the menstrual disc. So the disc is going to be worn higher in the vagina. And the difference between a disc and a cup is mainly the fact that for some people, it might be more comfortable, but you can have sexual intercourse with a disc, and you're not necessarily going to be able to do that with a cup. So that is something that for some people is more comfortable per se.
It's amazing, and it's good news to me to see that now we have choices. It's such a good news. But then if I feel that my girl, my daughter, is going to have her cycle for the first time soon, I cannot buy everything. What should I do to make sure that we're prepared and that we have some basic products at home for when she needs it?
Yeah, and that's super important. And we always encourage parents actually to even make it an activity. So to take some time, sit down with their children. And even, for example, if you have some children that will or won't have periods, to even include everybody. So to kind of take the taboo off and make it an activity. So explain what is that natural biological process that is going to happen. And afterwards, kind of see with them, what are the different products they would like to use? We don't recommend, though, going from the get-go with tampons or a cup or a disc, because that can be a little bit more uncomfortable. And you want to kind of slowly get the body used to using those different products. But when there's parents doing first period kits, we'll usually recommend having at least a day pad, night pad, panty liner, just in case of emergency. And afterwards, what we're seeing is really an uptake in parents actually getting from the get-go period underwear, because it's just easy, it's comfortable. Often they'll start wearing them at night. We'll realize, oh, actually I can trust that pair of underwear. It's not going to leak. And afterwards, they're going to be sufficiently at ease to go out of the house with them and just go on and about with their day.
I'm not sure that everybody has the information, though, with those period underwears. Can you describe how to care for them, how to wash them?
Yeah, actually, it's super, super easy. So basically, at the end of the day, or whenever you feel that you do need to change them, and it's really okay. Do change them as much as you need, as much as to feel comfortable, basically. And you just need to put them in the washing machine on cold, and afterwards you just hang them to dry, and it's as easy as that.
As easy as that. Wow, wonderful. Maybe one last question, Lara. Are there some options that are better suited for our daughters when they play sports or when they're physically active?
Yeah, definitely. Well, period underwear is amazing. We've also seen recently a couple of brands that have been releasing even swimsuits that are adapted for periods. So no more excuse to miss the swimming class. And afterwards, if the person prefers to wear, for example, pads, we always recommend going with 100% organic cotton because it's going to breathe more. It's going to be non-irritant. And basically, that's really, really important because you don't want, especially, for example, let's say you're playing soccer and you're moving a lot, you don't want any of that shafting and irritation, which obviously, if you continue wearing products that are made with synthetics or even worse, plastic, you're going to continue having that irritation.
Lara, I learned a lot. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much for talking about a subject that is vital.
Let's continue with a true outdoors enthusiast, someone who can get enough adventures, especially when it comes to mountain biking, Kelsey Begg.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you
Welcome,
for having me
Kelsey.
today.
Thank you so much for being here. She represents the organization Les Chèvres de Montagnes, the largest outdoor community for women in Canada. Thank you for joining us, Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you.
So, do girls and women encounter specific barriers to being active in the outdoors?
I would say yes, from a personal perspective on that, and even just with the participants we have. Oftentimes, certain outdoor activities are often seen as more masculine or less accessible just because of either equipment or not having the right skills, or the biggest thing is typically fear or intimidation. So yes, I would say yes on that statement, and just that a lot of the time it's a personal barrier.
Okay. So, what can make things easier for women and girls to get into the outdoors?
Yeah, so I think with Les Chèvres de Montagnes, one of our biggest focuses, we provide a community for women that oftentimes the participants, when they do come and they register for the activities, they're often there either alone or they come with friends. But the biggest idea behind it is that creating a comfortable place for people to come alone so that they can then meet friends once they're there. So a lot of the time, once you have a friend that you're doing the same activity, you're more likely to continue doing it because you have that partner, that adventure buddy that will always say yes when it's time to go for any sort of outdoor activity.
And I know that some people still wonder, why is it important to create groups of women or girls for that kind of activity? What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, so again, back to the intimidation factor. A lot of the time, too, the big focus with Les Chèvres de Montagnes is doing outdoor activities that are, again, intimidating, but there's the lack of pressure performance. Okay. So we've got typically initiation, training, and progression. So the idea for individuals to try something knowing that there's no pressure to perform, they feel less vulnerable. They have that freedom to be themselves and make errors if they need to, but also laugh about it because it's a safe space to have that opportunity.
And the outdoors, I feel like that's one of the positive things about that kind of activity. It's non-competitive, but you can work on your social connections. I guess this is something that you can see in your groups.
Absolutely, yeah. So, for example, I was helping with we had ice climbing in March, and there was two girls who arrived to that I knew previously. So one of them, we had done the Winter Trail Running Club together. And then there was another girl who had been to some previous events. We had like a launch party at with one of our partners. So it's nice to see the relationships of the participants. They meet each other at one activity and they become friends, and they will start carpooling for the other activities. And then the community keeps growing. So when you have an instance like that, it's really nice. Even myself, when I first moved here, I didn't have a lot of friends because I was from British Columbia. I didn't speak French very well. And I would say now the girls that I've met through Les Chèvres de Montagnes, I consider them my Quebec family.
Oh, wow.
So I think that's really nice.
Oh, super nice. Yeah. And now as a mom, sometimes I'm convinced. I know how the outdoors, it's a great opportunity for my children to be more physically active. So I'm going to plan for an exciting weekend with them. And then we leave. And then I'm excited for them to share that activity with them. But I think it's important to note that sometimes things don't necessarily go as planned.
Absolutely.
So do you have any adventures or any stories?
Yeah, so definitely it's always worth bringing double of everything. Yeah. I've got into the habit now of always having a raincoat with me just because you never know when you're going to need a raincoat, and just always having extra stuff with you and always just trying to see the silver lining of the situation. Yeah. For example, I was on a hiking activity with some students last Wednesday. The weather wasn't looking too terrible, but a lot of the students showed up not necessarily dressed appropriately. We ended up going through rain, and then we had snow. And then it went back to rain afterwards. So it was just a matter of, no matter how much you look at the forecast, it's always better to be over-prepared just so that you can end the activity with at least some smiles, or try to get some smiles in there.
And it's typical for a teenager also to be somewhat happy, somewhat unhappy.
Yes, absolutely. There's always the highs and lows, but and I think in instances like that too, being the adult, like showing that you yourself can also be vulnerable, kind of shows them we are all human, and it is normal to not love every single moment of everything. So. Yeah.
And what about you? Were you always an outdoors enthusiast?
No. Like when I was little, I loved camping, I loved kayaking, but mountain biking very quickly became my main sport. However, when I first started mountain biking, I was going with my dad and my brother, and I absolutely hated it. I thought they were trying to hurt me or something like that, just because I didn't have maybe not the most appropriate bike for it, but and I was just scared. I was like, this is wild, but now I absolutely love it. So it's, even if you start off not necessarily enjoying something, it can grow on you, and I think the more you do it, the more you gain that interest and that love for the sport or the activity.
And from your experience, what would you say are the most striking benefits of sharing an activity with your teenager? As a mom, what are the benefits of trying the outdoors with my teenage daughter?
I think it's a nice experience when you're one-on-one, you're in nature, you get to appreciate nature, and you get to appreciate that moment together. I mean, as you go, I live very far from my family now, but when I look back at moments when I do get to go home and I go hang out with my mom, we go for a walk, or I go biking with my dad, it's a really nice moment where it's just the two of you, and you're having fun, you're sharing laughs, and you're sharing a memory together. So you feel good in the moment, and when you look back on it too, you're still smiling because it makes you it's a nice memory, and it's a nice moment in the present when you're there too. So.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, for spending some time with me. I thank you for the advice. And I can't wait for next weekend to spend some special time with my family in the outdoors.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All teenage girls deserve to reach their full potential and lead a healthy lifestyle. As parents, we want what's best for our children, and we wish we could push them and encourage them all to pursue an active lifestyle. But let's keep in mind that being a teenager comes with many challenges. To the best of our ability, let's try to be a positive role model for them, even if it means trying mountain biking for the first time. This podcast is produced as part of the FitSpirit Wellbeing Program powered by Beneva. For more content, visit fitspirit.ca.